Chicago.org.
Listen to AM 560 The Answer online at 560theanswer.com, on the AM 560 mobile app, on your Alexa-powered smart speaker, and on TuneIn, iHeart, and on Odyssey. Now, from the Signature Bank Studios, this is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson. America First with Sebastian Gorka, weekday afternoons at 3 on AM 560. The Answer.
All right, you still have time to head over to the Pride of Naperville. That's at 1503 North Aurora Road in Naperville. It's at the corner of Ogden and Raymond Drive. And here's the deal. The first 56 people will get a $50 gas gift card to the Pride stores. We'll go there while supplies last. Again, it's up until 8 o'clock this morning for you to get to 1503 North Aurora Road. Good luck. If you didn't get it this week, try again next week. Be safe out there and have fun.
All right, top of the morning, Dan and Amy. House Oversight Committee Chairman Jim Comer responding to the announcement of the impeachment inquiry, providing more color on the topic. And, addressing the hue and cry from the left. Where's the blue dress? Where's the evidence? There's no evidence here. Where's the evidence?
More than likely, we've requested bank records from Hunter Biden and Jim Biden early on, and obviously we never got a response back. We will re-request those this week. If they do not comply with our request, then we will subpoena and undoubtedly head to court. Now, the impeachment inquiry gives us a tool in the toolbox when we go to court. The strategy by the Biden lawyers would be to try to stall this and to run out the clock and to hold this up in court for a year or so. What this will do is make the judge have to act faster. This demonstrates how serious we are about the concerns we have with Joe Biden. We've already made the case that his family's taken in over $20 million from some bad people in some bad countries that are adversarial to the United States, and we don't know why. Joe Biden never has come out and said exactly what his family did to earn one penny of that $21 million.
Yeah, and you used to run a bank back in Kentucky, and there are over 150 SAR, suspicious activity reports. No one's been held accountable or explained what they are and why.
Mm-hmm. And the prospect of seeing Hunter Biden subpoenaed before this inquiry, during this inquiry.
So it's not like you're subpoenaing Joe Biden right now.
But what we found in the last few weeks is he was communicating back and forth with the government about Ukrainian policy, which is a huge problem for Joe Biden. Look, I would say we will get to the point very soon where we subpoena Hunter Biden. But at this point right now, I just want the bank records because we're following the money. And our concern is that Joe Biden was, in fact, benefiting from these schemes, from these illegal, corrupt activities of his son and brother.
But Ian Holmes on the business meeting, the White House spokeshuman, I guess he's a KJP understudy. All these business meetings, the phone calls, I guess the meeting that was reported in Just the News, John Solomon's outlet, that Hunter Biden brokered a meeting between then Vice President Joe Biden, Devin Archer, his business partner at the time, and an international banker they were courting for business in Kazakhstan. I guess that would all just be another expression of a father's love.
Why was the president at those meetings on those phone calls?
Well, again, I think this is part of the right wing's misinformation machine to try to confuse people about what the truth is. The truth is that the president, as he has said publicly for years, calls his family every day to check in. He calls his son every day to check in. He calls his other family members to check in to see how they're doing. He loves them. They're a tight-knit family. And what the GOP's own witness testified in this case is that that's exactly what the president was doing. He was checking in with Hunter during a particularly hard time, I might add, a time where the family was going through Hunter's brother Beau's illness. And of course the president checks in with his son and talks to him.
For more on this, pleased to be joined by Ben Domenech. He's the editor-at-large for Spectator World, contributor to Fox News, and writes at the Substack, the transom.com. He joins us now. Ben, thanks for being with us. Appreciate it.
Yeah, good to be with you. It's funny to hear this audio because it's one of these things where I feel like the the White House's spin really hasn't caught up with the things that we've learned in the past year and even in the past several months regarding everything that's going on. They're still sticking to this line that they've been trying to deploy, really throughout the 2020 election and even before that, about the nature of Joe Biden's relationship with his son that just simply doesn't pass the smell test anymore. It doesn't really connect with any of the fact patterns that we now know about. And really, this is just the fact patterns that we know based on people who've been willing to hand things over, as Jim Comer was saying, as opposed to, anything that really has the full subpoena power of the Congress behind it. That's going to change. We're going to see if that spin changes, but it certainly doesn't match up with the reality that we know. They were not talking about just, hey, checking in on you, buddy. There was a lot more going on than that.
Well, yeah, there were 20 phone calls at least that were documented between Joe and his son and their associates. And so how long do you think the media, they can't deny the 3 FBI whistleblowers, those conversations we mentioned, Devin Archer, Bob Alinsky. So why do they keep saying that there's no evidence here?
Well, I think that there's sort of a disconnect. One is I think Biden loyalists are saying that there's no evidence here. There's no there. They're just going to completely, say that, everything's fine, which is the equivalent of sort of Donald Trump saying that all of his calls are perfect. They're doing the same thing for their own side. But I think that one of the things that, inevitably happens in situations like this is that centrists and people who are more mindful of the way that this looks to, say, independent voters are increasingly nervous about what's going to play out because of what's going to come forward and what's going to be learned. Most people don't know about the degree to which, let's just focus on one aspect of this. The Biden family has received so much funding from China. Okay, China is not a country that is very popular among the American people, to say the least. And the fact that you had, while he was vice president, Hunter Biden going over there and developing the relationships that he had, by the way, with people who have since been, in the case of at least one major figure, disappeared by the Chinese government for bribes in other nations around the world. It's a situation that I think most Americans don't know about. Simply because they have so much in their commentariat who are, along the lines of Joe Scarborough and the like, who will just deny all the way down.
Or David French, for that matter, writing in the New York Post. David French, former conservative Christian, now neither. McCarthy's announcement comes after the initial Republican investigations failed to find any criminal activity by the president. There is no evidence remotely comparable to the evidence that spurred inquiries against Clinton or Trump. Really?
I sure hope that's the New York Times and not the New York Post, because I would have words with the editorial.
No, New York Times. Yeah, New York Times. Did I say Post? Yeah, New York Times.
Yeah. So first off, David French, there's nothing that he can, he has never accepted the idea that he should look to the log in his own eye before the speck in the other.
No question.
So I think that one of the things that he does is he finds the specks in the eyes of conservatives repeatedly, but he never does any kind of self-analysis of his own side of the question. And I think that in this case, just what we know, just what we've learned in the last year, has been really, really damning and raised a lot of questions. And it's one of these things where, I think that what the Republicans planned all along was we're going to do this in a serious manner. We're not going to rush to subpoena Hunter Biden before we have the kind of fact patterns that we want to be able to present him with, in front of any kind of inquiry. And so I think that they've done a very diligent job of doing this. Now, the question is, what do they do next? I think that it's very likely that we are going to see this impeachment inquiry turn into an actual impeachment. But keep in mind that this is a very narrow situation. And for Republicans who have, won a lot of seats that Joe Biden also won in the midterms, they are going to be people who are going to be in difficult situations when they have to make a decision about whether to vote in a way that could put their own seats at risk, especially for those members in New York and California. But I think that this is very important. We can't afford to have a repeat of this in the future. It's not something that is acceptable at the highest levels of government to have this type of bribery directed. That's what it is. It's bribery directed at whether it's a sibling or whether it's a spouse or whether it's a son, and have potentially the risk of U.S. policy being affected by it.
Well, that's it. I mean, everybody knows what this is. And the where's the evidence? I mean, it sounds like Bill Murray and Harold Ramis signing up for the Marines in stripes. Is I ever convicted of a felony? No, convicted? No, never convicted. Evidence? No, there's no evidence. No, you can't convict me. You can't convict me on this. So if there's no evidence, there's nothing to see here, then Jamie Raskin and the gang should be saying, go ahead with your gambit. Well, you're not going to find anything because there's nothing to find. But instead, that's all this, distracting from the important business of Congress, which nobody buys.
Yeah, no, that's absurd. And it's one of these situations where I think, look, the Democrats are have done this time and again. They create a new norm, a new rule, and then when Republicans abide by that new norm or rule, they complain to their media friends, and they yell hypocrisy, and they just sort of deploy everything and say, this is just an unacceptable, demeaning of the impeachment process. They impeached the former president after he was out of office,
right.
After he had already lost an election. It's one of these ridiculous situations where, okay, well, you've lowered the standards on impeachment. Now you're going to have to live with the ramifications of this. But I would argue that even in the absence of their impeachment of Donald Trump, not once but twice, I think that this is an impeachment inquiry that is completely justified, has to go forward, and we're going to learn a lot more. And I think this is going to end up going back to a president who obviously on the cusp of impeachment himself, Richard Nixon. What did the president know, and when did he know it? What did the vice president know, and when did he know it?
Well,
and the ramification.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
No, won't this impeachment inquiry though be able to be able to see his bank statements or anything?
Yep.
Because that's a big part of this is, he can say, people can say all they want, Biden, he was getting 10% kickback, but what, we need that proof.
What is Joe Biden's bank statements going to show? You think they actually wrote him a check for $5 million that he deposited in his checking account?
That's the other thing. Accounts. Yeah, you're not going to, I don't think you're going to find from China to Joe $400,000 for cash.
Right.
But I do think that what we're going to find out a lot more of is just the degree to which we are going to learn more about these 20 LLCs, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
And that's something that I think that we deserve to know more about in order to have a clearer picture of what's really going on, because we can't trust the White House or this president, to be honest about it.
One more topic before we let you jump, which is the Supreme Court. The left has been trying to stick up Thomas and Alito, even to some extent Roberts, trying to phony up these ethics complaints against those justices. They're trying to do through political pressure what they've been unable to do, electorally, and through the process of nominating and seating Supreme Court justices. Where does that stand now with the left's assault on the court, much as they're promoting themselves as the vanguard of democracy?
Well, I would just encourage folks to go to thespectator.com, and they can read my cover story from the latest print issue of the magazine on all of this. Justice Thomas has been, of course, the person who they have targeted by far the most, because they hate him the most. And this has really been led by an effort led by Sheldon Whitehouse, who is one of the dumber senators, and I say that with due respect. And it's one of these things where, frankly, they have engaged in this dark money campaign to try to render the court, an entity that they can change and work to their will, both by forcing, members to recuse themselves potentially from cases, but also by making the whole process one that, they have the potential to, and I think that this is a very real possibility. If they take the White House again in the coming election, especially if it's Joe Biden and he doesn't have to face voters again, I think the likelihood that they attempt to pack the court, add additional members to it, and undo the Trump appointees' advantage on the court is very, very high. People are underestimating the degree to which they are going to be willing to warp the court because they believe it's completely unfair that Republicans and conservatives have been able to be nominated to that court. Republican nominees have been able to be put on that court to the degree that they have.
Ben Domenech is the editor at large for the Spectator World, contributor to Fox News, and his Substack, thetransom.com. Ben, thank you as always.
Thank you.
Thank you. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Before you see it on TV, share it on Facebook, or read about it in the paper. Hear it here first. This is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
Would you go to court without a lawyer when the other guy is lawyered up? Or are you going to go it alone and learn law and procedure as you go? When you have an insurance claim for your home or business, it's the same thing.
This is Dan Lights from Crosscom. We inspect your property